Well, Felix, we typically start out talking about college football. I think that if there was one year where a defensive player should have probably won the Heisman, they should have just given it to a defensive player, been like, hey, look, none of these guys are really – there was no real Heisman moment. I mean, I guess you could say that the catch at Penn State, that throw, but it was more about the receiver making the catch. Pavia had a bunch of plays that he made. The kid from Notre Dame did really well, but I think the guy that is not talked about enough is Jacob Rodriguez for Texas Tech. And I really thought if there was a year that somebody like that should have gone, again, the same kid did excellent, but I think if you look at just overall play, that kid is amazing, man. If you get an opportunity, because I know the playoffs is probably going to be the first time that a lot of people across the country are going to be able to watch Texas Tech. Watch for number 10. He has a really cool story too. Like his wife is a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. Like, dude, the guy is a total monster. And so, like, I thought, Mendoza probably should have won it. Best player on the best team. I think if you wanted to go in and be like, oh, if it's more of an MVP, I never know how people are going to vote for this thing because I think it's very confusing. But like even with Pavia, I thought, okay, well, if you take him off of Vanderbilt, is it Vanderbilt? And so, he could have won. But don't get me wrong, kid's talented. Plug in any quarterback into that system, and they're going to be successful this year too. So I just feel like that. And then that I thought that somebody took the rushing yards from Johnny Manziel and put it when he won the Heisman and put it up against the kid from Notre Dame. It was like he had better numbers. So I think like this was one of those weird years where like there just was not a guy.
Right. And maybe I'm just a mark for like the Fernando Mendoza hype. You kind of had to give it to the guy. And I think in the whole Indiana turnaround, Kurt Cignetti rightfully gets a lot of the credit, but I think some of it goes to guys like Fernando Mendoza who took a chance on going to Indiana. Like maybe this will work out for my career, and it works out to the nth degree. And so I think it's kind of representative for all of their players, like you're saying, best player on best team, and Fernando Mendoza kind of was. And I think aside from the catch, that whole drive against Penn State was pretty good. And I know that Penn State isn't who we thought they were going to be, but he also beats Ohio State. I know that was just last week, but some things just all over the place, and that was more of a defensive win. But all of that together, I think you got to be like, yeah, Fernando Mendoza.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
And especially when Diego Pavia explains why he doesn't win the Heisman himself on social media immediately after the ceremony and all that good stuff. But talking about the college football playoff, a couple of matchups this week. Bama versus OU, another matchup. Will Brent Venables get his third win over the Crimson Tide in just 2 years? And then Miami taking on A&M. Will A&M be able to hold on to this pressure, or handle this pressure because will they A&M it again because it's A&M, or will Miami find a way to get Carson Beck and Malik Stoney's experience to get them to the next round? Give me a pick in both of those games and tell me why.
I really think like Venables is on a heater right now with his defense. It's an elite defense. He's got it run. This is back to where, it looks like a decade ago or even almost more than a decade ago when he was at OU and they were just dominating people on defense. The scheme is so diverse. They are an absolute outlier in what they run. They are one of the most diverse schemes in college football, but then they're also elite at everything. So it's like, they're doing stuff, but they're also doing that stuff really well. So it's like the whole adage of like more is more. Yeah, that feeds in. I ran on I do a study guide every year on match quarters where I kind of put the data out. And one of the things that I did this year was like, there is a natural regression with the more things that you do on the field, the less likely you're going to be successful. Just kind of how it works. Just more tends to not be more. You want to be really good at a few things. Oklahoma, again, is just an outlier. I think Venables is one of the best defensive coaches, will go down as one of the best defensive coaches of all time, just because of what he does. Now, Bama on the other side, I like Kane Womack defensively. I think DeBoer does a really good job. He's a leader of men. I mean, he's won literally everywhere and at every level. I think this is one of those. It's a weird Bama team, but I think we've talked about this before. Like Bama and Georgia used to be able to just kind of keep all the players away from everybody else. Like they would sign guys knowing like, hey, well, we'll have them for like 3 years. They'll end up being a junior. If they end up popping, they'll go to the league. We got another guy behind them. If they don't, they'll stay to be a senior. Now we have a senior, we'll have a couple seniors on the team. And I think like it's almost reminds me of it's like the old Duke teams in basketball where they would just always have like 3 or 4 seniors and then they'd have like an All-American freshman, right? But then it was like Kentucky on the other hand would just be nothing but freshmen. So it's like it's kind of flipped where this is. But I like OU in this. I think OU is going to end up winning this. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Ty Simpson is amazing. If he has an amazing game, it's going to be really, really tough. But I like OU in this just because I just like that defense, man. And I think they're gritty. I think they're peaking at the right time. The offense does bother me a little bit. Mateer kind of fell off. We've talked about that a few times, but I think that's going to be the key there. Who do you got in this game?
I for some reason, it's really hard to see that and pick against it. And I know Nick Saban's not there anymore and like all of that good stuff. But I mean, and you said, excuse me, you said it earlier, Kalen DeBoer has won everywhere he's gone. And like, I think it's just, again, it's going to be really hard to beat this team for a second time this year in this amount of time because I think Alabama's just really good. There's just a solid football team all the way around. And so they're maybe a little bit more balanced than an Oklahoma team where Oklahoma's offense may sputter a little bit more than an Alabama offense would. So will it become like, can they keep up with points if Alabama's offense gets into one of those days where it's like you said, Ty Simpson, it has one of those really good days. But moving forward to A&M, and this is what kind of worries me, like, are we in the midst of like one of those multi-week A&M collapses? And it just may only be over the course of 2 games because it was Texas and this next one that they're playing. But is it happening to this A&M team and Miami just gets to be the beneficiary of it?
Yeah, I just have concerns with like Miami traveling to College Station. Like, just like I think if it was in the Orange Bowl and it was at home, and like they would be fine. We're playing it. I say Orange Bowl. It's the Hard Rock Stadium, but everybody knows what I'm talking about.
I just went with it.
Right. I think like that's going to be really difficult for the Hurricanes to go into College Station, 110,000 fans. I just think that there's a lot going on. A&M to me is really weird. Last year, they just could not get the secondary right. I mean, it was even to the point where he even was like, we literally cannot cover. I think this year,
head coach.
Yeah, and he's the head coach. He's defense. I mean, it's like, I think he was to the point where he was like just so frustrated with it as well. He got that fixed. I think, we mentioned this the other week of like, they're not playing Texas. And I think as long as they don't play Texas, which by the way, Texas didn't make the playoffs. So as long as they're not playing Texas, I think that this is a really good team. I just don't know at the end of the day, do they have just the firepower all the way around? I think Concepcion, if he goes off, I do like Carson Beck. I think just the way that he talks and the way people he kind of rubs people the wrong way. They did play in the ACC with the kind of collapse at the end. So to me, I think like Miami's kind of a trending down, whereas A&M, it's like, when's the other shoe going to fall? Because it's A&M. It's right. Like, when is the other shoe going to fall? Like where are you going to mess up? Where are you going to stumble? Where are you going to kind of like, just not live up to the hype? I think that's kind of been A&M's made. So both of these teams, I think, have a lot of hype around them, with Miami obviously a little bit less.
Yeah. All right. A couple of matches higher on the card. JMU and Tulane, big dogs in their matchups. If you were to pick one of these teams to upset Oregon or Ole Miss, which one would it be and why?
I think it's Tulane, just because of all the noise going on. Now, Tulane's going to is also having a coaching change as well. But like, to me, I think I think it's one of those deals where they want to win for their coach that's leaving to Florida. I think most of those kids understand Tulane and Florida are two completely different things. I think Kiffin leaving to LSU, a lot of those guys are kind of like, hey, what are we going to do? The whole entire offensive staff, I think most of it came back. They're going to coach, but it's kind of like you're a little bit of a turncoat, like, so I think if there is turmoil in one of these, it's going to be that. I think Dan Lanning is one of the best coaches. I don't know what it is about Oregon. Oregon just in Lanning, they just get shots from everybody. We had the Penn State deal. It's like, the whole deal with, I feel like every week someone's taking a shot at this. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's kind of like Nike and just kind of everybody knows like they have a ton of money. They basically have like an infinite amount of money that they have. JMU's great. It's a great story. I just don't know if they have the firepower. I think Tulane has probably a little bit better option there than JMU.
Yeah. All right. You've got some advice here for some real football dorks out there. And that's to go watch the FCS playoffs. And even as a football lover of my caliber, never have I ever been like, let me see what's going on in that championship subdivision.
Well, I'll just say this, that if you love tight ends and you love kind of running the football and offenses like that, this is the time to watch the FCS playoffs, because especially those upper Midwest and the Big Sky schools, a lot of them are 12 personnel heavy. They're running the ball. Their quarterbacks are running the ball. It's like you're watching it and like it's a defensive nightmare. I don't want to watch, like, it's just like 12 personnel and quarterback run game and motion. Like, I don't want to deal with it. But we have Montana versus Montana State. This is insane. It's the first time they've met in the playoffs. These are two of the best teams outside of the Missouri Valley. So outside of all the Dakota schools that we see every year in this. Think Iron Bowl, but in the playoffs. So imagine if Auburn and Alabama met in the college football playoffs. That's basically what we have. And it will also be about 20 degrees because it's in Montana. So if you want to go watch really good football, this would be the week to do it and flip it over to the FCS.
Yeah. All right, let's jump back to Thursday night where we saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fall apart in the fourth quarter against the Atlanta Falcons and Kirk Cousins of all quarterbacks. And he was back, and Kyle Pitts was phenomenal for him. Obviously, Bijan put on a hell of a game for him, and I mean, at least raises the question of, is he the best back in the NFL? And I think like a healthy amount of smart people would say yes, but some people would split your conversations a few different ways. But what happened to this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team? And then we can talk about how much Todd Bowles actually hates this team and how it's kind of his fault.
Yeah. Well, the crazy thing about it is like there has been just an absolute complete defensive collapse. This defense really has been teetering on an absolute collapse. Really, I feel like for the past couple of years. Last year they didn't have much of a pass rush. What do? They go out and get Hassan Riddick. They have problems at linebacker. They don't go and get a linebacker. They don't go and find a linebacker that can actually cover. That's the biggest thing to me. If you go back and look at Kirk Cousins versus the Buccaneers, he loves this defense. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about later at the very last thing that we talk about when we go to the Monday night game. We're going to talk about zone pressures versus seasoned quarterbacks. This is an example of Kyle Pitts basically ran nothing but like crossing routes and arrows and like against zone pressure. And then it's just, you got the freak athlete the ball and he just was able to run away from people. I would take a pause because like there's always like the Kyle Pitts truthers of like, oh, he hadn't been used right. Him and Penix don't like each other, right? Like, and then Kirk Cousins comes in and proceeds to throw like 300 passing yards, and then it's like always to Kyle Pitts. And so I think like there's a little bit of disconnect, but yeah, you're completely right. This Buccaneers defense, I can't figure it out either. I love Todd Bowles. I think he's an amazing defensive coordinator. They stop the run really well. The secondary tends to fall apart every once in a while. It'll just have like a terrible game. Right. And then the linebackers, though, and this is to me the key element in modern football. You cannot forget a level on your defense. And so often that level is the linebacker. They're kind of like, remember when the running backs don't matter, like everything we had, and then they had to have like a meeting in the off season and stuff. Like, I think people are finding out really quickly, like you have to have a really good second level. I think the Cowboys figured that out, and they went and traded for Logan Wilson, which, by the way, I don't know why he's still not starting, but they still leave Kenneth Murray in there. But to me, that was the biggest thing is he, for whatever reason, whether it's his palms pressures or it's his traditional fire zones, the seams are always open. The middle of the field is always open. It's really easy for those quarterbacks to hit it. And that's what we saw.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Staying in the NFC South and right on schedule, right when everyone started to believe in them just a little bit, the Carolina Panthers lost to the New Orleans Saints. What happened to your boys out there in North Kakalaki?
When they can't run the ball, this is a terrible team. The defense the defense is not great, but I think a lot of it has to do with just more numbers. Like they've just been on, like in a lot of these games, they've just been on the field forever. And it's just because that offense just is not, like, when they can't run the ball, they can't control the clock. And when they can't control the clock, it's just pretty much game over. I mean, Young tied with Dowdle at the end of the day with 49 rushing yards to lead the Panthers. I mean, we've seen this over and over again. When they run the ball, this offense is really tough. When they can't run the ball and they have to basically sit there and drop back pass with Bryce Young, it doesn't work. It just doesn't. And the defense really does not have – it is one of the most anemic pass rushes. I mean, they're almost to where Atlanta was. You know, everybody was making fun of Atlanta for like almost 5 years because it was like they literally could not manufacture a sack. I mean, the interior of this defense is good, but they're all run stoppers. They're not really pass rushers. It's not like Chris Jones is out there, or like even with the Rams, like a Fisk and a Kobe Turner, of where, oh, those guys are going to get 5, 6, maybe 7 sacks. There's not Zach Allen there that's going to basically create just tremendous amounts of pressure. You have really good run stoppers. That's great. Name one of their edges. Name one. That you can't. It's literally a guy. Like sometimes it's almost like they just put a mannequin out there. So it's really difficult too, because then the secondary. Because if you look at the secondary, they have 3 really good pieces in the secondary. Mike Jackson is probably one of the more underrated corners in the league. You have J.C. Horn, which is one of the top boundary corners in the league. Morey can play the nickel. He can play back. But when you don't, again, we just talked about it with the Buccaneers. When you don't have that middle piece, those linebackers just are not very good in the middle. And so when you can't run the ball, when you have deficiencies on defense, you leave it open for a team like the Saints to come score. They got swept by the Saints. The Saints are just not very good.
That's crazy. And this is like year 1 of tear it down to the studs, real rebuilds for Kellen Moore. Like, we are redoing this whole thing, and you got swept by them.
Yeah, and I mean with Shuck, I mean, they're gonna have to look. Shuck, I don't think is a long-term answer, but I think he's gonna be good enough. He reminds me a lot of, like, he's gonna basically be Davis Mills.
Exactly. Will he be good enough to get them Arch Manning next year, who's officially going back to school?
Right. Like, you would hope that he's good enough to just do kind of what you did this year of like, hey, win 4 or 5 games, and then you can go and get Arch Manning next year, which is like bring him home. Right. I mean, that would be the perfect scenario. Or we know too, like, look, we're saying Arch Manning because it'd be perfect, but we're projecting. But that class next year is going to be really, really good.
Right.
And so it's like, even if it's Lenore Sellers or something like that, as long as we can be in the top 10, we can get a bunch of the offload, really the dead cap and the bad contracts. That's really what they need to do, is really just look. So yeah, I agree with you. Tear down to the studs. I mean, look, offensively, Kamara's kind of a shell of who he is. I think Olave is pretty good. I mean, all he did was run benders and seams. And so, like, again, it goes back to the linebacker play for Carolina. It's terrible. It's a zone-heavy defense. They don't really play man. We saw this in Tampa Bay. We're seeing a repeatable pattern. It's so amazing how some of these divisions tend to end up looking at – it's like the Spider-Man meme where they're all looking at each other. This tends to be it. Carolina can't get pressure. They're 31st in sacks. And I don't care, because we're going to talk about this when we get to Dallas. If you don't get pressure, These are still NFL quarterbacks. Chuck is still an NFL quarterback. He got drafted in the second round. You can say whatever you want. He's still an NFL quarterback.
Right.
If you don't get pressure on his face, he can just dink and dunk you, and that's what the Saints did.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. The worst thing happened to my boy Patrick Mahomes. The ACL went out, and they were kind of on a drive to see if they could tie the game or win the game. So that's what really frustrated me. But like even more so, like the drive that the Chargers had before halftime to go score a touchdown after being up 2 scores. Like, what are you doing there? You can't. That can't happen. But overall, just I mean, the I guess benediction, if you will, on the Chiefs season, because it's completely over now. This team was just tired. They just didn't have the juice to do it this year one way or another. They had little moments of it here and there, and like that 2022 draft class only played in Super Bowls. Like those are 20-game seasons over and over again for all of your stars, all of your contributors, like regardless, even if, like your Leo Chenal, like that. We're talking about guys who not everybody even knows. And so like I think this is a necessary outcome for the Kansas City Chiefs because there should be some reshuffling on the coaching staff. I think Matt Nagy is a big part of the problem, could be at least, because they need some type of infusion of a run game. But hopefully that top 10 pick will help them to build out the roster some more, or pick up Jeremiah Love or something like that.
Well, I think here's the deal. For Mahomes, let's talk about the injury really quick.
Mhm.
I think for him, this can be a potential really big deal for him, and I mean in a good way. This can be a huge, reset, like you talked about. I mean, really, in the past 5 years, this has been the best team in the NFL, bar none, not even close. And I think sometimes when you're winning, you aren't necessarily pushing anymore. And I don't think that this is a team that just kind of lost its edge or they quit innovating. I think defensively the meta flipped. What they were doing is now not novel anymore. It's pretty much what everybody is kind of,
and it still kind of works. Like it's still like their defense, they just a little few things here and there. Like they need more pass rush. They need probably an extra piece in the secondary to play on the outside so that Trent McDuffie can play on the inside at the slot. But other than that, it still kind of works.
Oh, 100%. They were playing base before everybody else was. They were playing zone pressures before everybody else was. So, I mean, it's there. And look, Spags is still Spags. The way that he uses Chenal is really good. But it's like you can't have a 250-pound 3 technique all the time. Like that's cool, and it works, I think, in spurts. But like, if you're relying on that to kind of stop the run, I mean, I'm looking at it. I watched that game and I'm like, yeah, Chris Jones is it. And we've talked about, I feel like this is like we're on repeat. So if you listen to the show every week, you're probably like, yes, we know Cody's going to tell you that Chris Jones can't be the engine of the defense. It's like, yeah, but you watch it and it's like,
that's all it is.
That's all it is. Karlaftis, I think, would do really well as a backup defensive end. The problem is you drafted him in the first round, you paid him. Now you got to play him. I think you need to have some sort of tackle play that's just not Chris Jones wrecking shop, which he tried to turn it on. It will be very interesting to me. I tell you what, Felix, you will know the mood of the team by how he plays and finishes out the next 3 weeks. If he's just going out there only caring about sacks, not defending the run, you know that he's probably done. He's just trying to get his sack numbers up, and then it probably needs a full reset in the offseason. If he goes out there and he's played the way that he's really played in the last month, I think there's still buy-in in this, and these guys are playing. But Mahomes, under duress the entire game, 50% pressure rate the entire game. I mean, that's the entire season right there. And that's
and their tackles went out. Like, I mean, there was that big chunk of the season where Josh Simmons was out for the personal reasons, and then he gets hurt in the Cowboys game. And then Wanye Morris gets hurt, Jawan Taylor gets hurt, Asa Pole is their undrafted rookie playing, and he didn't play terribly against a couple of decent pass rushes. And so it was like all of the worst things that could have happened, especially to the offense when it comes to the injuries, offensive line wise. And then you add on top of it, just hope Patrick Mahomes gets out of the season healthy, and he didn't. Like, and it just seemed like a very routine rollout, and the guy just grabbed him at his ankle and his knee popped out. That's all that.
No.
And it was just such a strange, weird injury where it's like, yeah, you can't be mad at him for being the guy that rolls out and escapes because his offensive line wasn't there. It was just something kind of routine, and they were about to. It seemed like they were on a drive to tie or win the game, so can't be that mad at him for doing what he was doing in that spot.
No, it was a freak deal to begin with. I do agree with you too, like just offensive design. I think it's really interesting. You look, who have been the best 4 teams really over the past 5 years? It's been the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, and the Ravens. And who are the 4 teams? Like really, Buffalo has Superman at quarterback, but you could argue like they are all designed to beat each other because that's who they figure they're going to meet. And then everything flipped on every single one of these teams. Like the Chiefs have no under center run game. They really have no run game to begin with. And I mean, I know that's really your deal that you've complained about all year. I really think that that's just kind of it. Then you go and you say, okay, well, what about the Bills? Well, the Bills don't have a number 1 receiver. They have no passing threat down the field. They basically, if Kincaid is hurt, they have no passing game at all. Allen has to literally win the game for them every single time. Defensively, if you're a spread team, like if you're the Chiefs or the Bengals, they're fine. They can survive that. If you get in 12 personnel and you just want to run down their throat, they have in the last month, I wrote about this week on Match Quarters with Christian Benford and blitzing the corner. But part of that, the caveat in there as well, is like Cole Bishop is also blitzing a ton. They've also doubled their slot corner. So like Taron Johnson is blitzing a ton. So like they've had to be like, oh crap, we've got to figure this out. And so I think like it's really interesting. Then we go to the Bengals, who kept trying to figure out the secondary, didn't want to pay defense, kept letting like their defensive line guys go. Next thing you know, they have no linebackers. They have no defensive line. They have one guy in the secondary that kind of looks good. Geno Stone might play good one day. He might not. The other, they have no defense. And so what you end up with is like all the 4 teams, and the Ravens, you can also argue too, is like, they're trying to figure out defensively and they've lost a bunch of people. And so you look at these 4 teams and they're all in turmoil. And it's really just because in the NFL, you have to consistently be evolving. You can't just sit there and just assume we're always going to play the Bills. We're always going to play the Bengals. I think it kind of caught up to them.
Right. And I think particularly with the, again, I'll say, just like I said with the defense, like it still essentially works, but what you can't do is set up the deep pass with shorter intermediate passes. You have to do it with some type of run game. And they were pretty decent with when they got underneath center after, I think it was after the Bills game. They were like, all right, line it up and run the ball because we kind of need to. Again, they did a little bit in the Broncos game when they started to get some of the offense moving against the Broncos, the little bit that they did. So you got to do that. Just add the extra fold in. I'm just really worried that's what's not going to happen this offseason. And they might have a top 10 pick to do that with. And they might just draft an edge rusher and be excited about that, which awesome. They need that too, but also do something with your offense as well.
Yeah, but I will just say this before we move on. I will say this. They have to be very careful who they take at edge. They can't go, well, let's just get a hybrid pass rush guy, right? Like, I know everybody's like, oh, what if we could get Arvo Reeds? Okay, that's great. I don't know if he necessarily fits in with what Spags wants. I would almost rather they take the best tackle available and then maybe try and find kind of like maybe a little bit more athletic Carl Loftus in the second round, high in the second round, maybe even trade back up into the first round and maybe find somebody at the very end that can do this. Before we move on from this game, one other thing I want to too. Herbert is one of those guys I feel like T-Law. Like obviously people know he's better than T-Law, but
barely.
Statistically, this is a crazy stat, and there were a couple of them this week, but he passed Mahomes for second most passing yards in the first 6 seasons, which I thought was insane, considering how much they tried to run the ball last year. And look, the Chiefs tried to heat him up, but it just didn't work. And the last thing that we'll say, and then we'll move on to the Broncos-Packers game, is this Chargers defense is trending up at the very right time. We're going to really kind of have an idea the last 2 weeks They played Dallas, so get right game, get right, get healthy. Then they got Houston, then they got Denver to finish out. I'm really interested to see how they finish out this year.
Those are some really tough defenses for Justin Herbert to face, especially with that beat up offensive line that he's had for multiple weeks now.
Yes, you do not want to play Houston and the Broncos when you don't have tackles.
And then even if they somehow make it out of that, they got to go to the playoffs and probably play one of them fairly soon.
Yes, exactly.
In the first or second round, if they make it to the second round. All right, we talked about Patrick Mahomes tearing his ACL. Micah Parsons also tears his ACL. I also agree with you. I don't think this is the worst thing in the world for the Packers, where I still think they have enough pieces to make a run in the playoffs. Where I do think it is another problem is Christian Watson goes down. Tucker Kraft has been down. And so where are they going to, they have another game against the Bears. I think that'll be a big marker of where we're at with the Packers going forward. I know that they beat them just a couple weeks ago, but I feel like that's a series that feels like it's going to be split this year for the first time in a while. But your Broncos get a dub over the Packers because Bo Nix is like, you know what? I'll score some points because I kind of feel like it.
Hey, you forgot. I can throw the ball. I'm not just kind of like, he actually, look, he played probably the best game that he's played all year in that. You kind of looked up at the end and you're like, oh yeah, he threw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. He actually threw the ball really, really good. I put in the notes, I said, I don't think this is the death nail for the Packers. I don't think people really realize that having Micah helps them out. Yes, defensively, they're awesome, but pressure wise, they're really not that much better than they were last year. Like, this is not a team that is just manufacturing sacks. I think what this team is that just you have the pressure and coverage aspect is probably that marriage is probably the best in the NFL. And they play really good man coverage. They heat you up. The quarterback doesn't have a lot of time to throw, so he has to throw into tight windows. Then they throw the change up of zone pressure, which their zone pressures are the most insane number. I mean, they are averaging yards per down, like yards per drop back on these is like less than 2 yards. The league average is 5. So just think about that. Like, they're literally turning people into check down Charlies. I think if you go and you watch their tape last year, Quay Walker was basically what Micah Parsons did. They're going to blitz him through the middle. They'll take Edrin Cooper. They'll blitz him into the B gap, blitz him off the edge. So I think they're just going to pivot. It's like, okay, we don't have Micah, so we don't have the down-to-down pressure. So they'll probably drop just a little bit. But overall, I don't think this is. I think the story here, and I said this, everybody who thought the Packers were just going to come in and beat them. Oh, the Packers kill them. The Packers kill man coverage. Love's going to have a great day. And I mentioned, I know Mina Kimes said something about her and Solak were talking on theirs about how, Denver runs the highest amount of man. And I'm like, yeah, but really, if you look at it, they're not opposed to pivoting to more zone, which is what I think they did. I think they looked at what Carolina did to them, which is basically, we're just going to play a bunch of zone. I'm going to force Love to throw deep and throw interceptions. And that's exactly what he did. His 2 interceptions were deep balls in the middle of the field. He thought they were open. They weren't. Once Watson went down, game was over. And I think too, I think Micah going down gave the Broncos a lot of confidence to just say, okay, now we can really lean into this drop back passing game. We don't necessarily have to run the ball, which the Packers have one of the better run defenses in the league. So it wasn't like it was super successful, but we know this. We've talked about this before. Peyton is willing to just do the 3 yards in a cloud of dust to just keep you honest. He will not go away from that. But I think that, and then once Watson went down, it was game over. PS2 was locked in, man. Surtain was locked in. Watson was 1 for 5. That's it. He was 1 catch, 5 yards. They do struggle. Dude, the theme, if you're noticing a theme here and you are a coach or you are a smart fan and you're like, why are these defenses failing? It's the linebacker play. So if you're going to play more zone, your linebackers have to be able to cover. They have to know where the hell they're going and what to look at. defense struggled. The Broncos
Former
struggled.
safeties. You gotta turn your safeties into linebackers, and then they can cover.
Well, that's what the Rams have done. So why do you think the Rams play so much dime? Because they have 3 safeties on the field and they're able to do it. Now, it's not like what Arizona's doing, but yeah, they're putting it and letting Landman sit in the A gap, and then they're letting their guys play. Now, I am a little bit concerned. You just mentioned safety, like Brandon Jones is on the IR. It looks like he tore his pec. This is a big deal. Because Jahdae Barron, I think a lot of Broncos fans have been surprised. There's games where he plays a lot. There's games where he doesn't play at all. Is he a corner? Is he a safety? I think he could help out against tight ends. PJ Locke played well last year. I think he was a little bit underrated last year, but he still worries me because Brandon Jones is really, really good. But yeah, that 12 personnel, and go look at it. Go look at the teams. Whether, let's say the Broncos go to the Super Bowl. Well, they're probably going to play somebody like the Rams. What do? 12 personnel. So it's like, it's not looking good.
Yeah. So the Las Vegas Raiders against the 2 teams who played in the Super Bowl last year, 62-0.
Yeah.
In 2 games.
It's the first time a team has had two donuts in a season since, like, I think since before you were born, Felix, like 2000, like early 2000s, man.
Good God. It looks like Fernando Mendoza is likely going to be a Las Vegas Raiders unless the Giants hold on and lose every game from now on. And that probably because Jackson Dart's going to bang his head against the brick wall. But it's been terrible in Vegas. It's hard to see, and I know that, like, you don't fire Pete Carroll at this age, but like, you shove him out the door, kind of how Seattle did if you're Tom Brady and Mark Davis, right?
Look, people tell you who they are, and I think that you saw this at the end of Seattle. Is that he had that brief stint where he let, like, Clint Hurt come in. He hired some other guys, like, to come in and to change his defense, right? But the offense never really changed. They could never figure out protection. They couldn't really run the ball, even though he wanted to run the ball. And then you look at what he did here. He basically neutered Graham. Graham's defense this year is not. It literally looks like a Pete Carroll defense. They've gone off. Look, Graham always ran a lot of cover 3, but this is look. He's trying to run Legion of Boom stuff. I think it's like when you're, like, desperate, you're like, well, I'm just going to go to what I know. Well, the problem is what you know was good 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's not good now. You got to do – actually, I thought Graham – I've said this multiple times, and you know this as a Chiefs fan. If they're Lou Anarumo and Patrick Graham know how to defend the Chiefs, and they have always known how to defend the Chiefs. Even when the Raiders were terrible, the Chiefs always struggled against the Raiders, and it's because Patrick Graham – I don't think that they can pay him to leave. I think that the one thing that people probably, if you don't pay attention to stuff like this, the Raiders, because they're family owned, do not have a lot of money. They're just like the Bengals. They're just like the Cardinals.
That's why they went to Vegas.
Right. And now he opened it up to minority ownerships, which this is where we got the Tom Brady thing. But they're cash strapped. So it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to sell some more of your franchise just to pay off Pete Carroll? But look, Pete Carroll, I thought if he just came in and was a CEO and let everybody do what they wanted to do, it was going to kind of work. We talked about in the offseason, this looked like a dangerous team. This secondary is terrible. It's just terrible. And they're running country cover 3. And so you have a terrible secondary and you're just running cover 3. Recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Speaking of Pete's former team, the Seattle Seahawks, it felt like they were kind of nice to Phillip Rivers, where they were just like, all right, we're going to 4-man pass rush. Whoever gets there, lay a pillow down and put the old man down first. And Phillip Rivers didn't look bad for the 8 million-year-old quarterback, but his arm has always been weird and it always will be. And being that it's not as strong as it once was, stuff like the pick are going to happen. And so, how do you feel about the Colts moving forward? Because I was looking on DraftKings the other day, they're over under for wins for the rest of the season, 8.5. They have 8 wins right now. Do you see the Colts winning one more game on their schedule?
Yeah, so they will finish with the 49ers, who don't have a pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
They will finish with the Jaguars and the Texans. So I think best case scenario, they finish 1-2. They beat the 49ers at home. They'll probably lose to the Jaguars and they'll probably lose to the Texans. I think the Seahawks have a great pass rush, but we kind of saw it. Like, they just couldn't finish. Right? They're not going to be able to score enough points to then do it. So this defense too, you don't have Travarius Ward. Sauce Gardner's kind of hurt. So what you were doubling down on, what you thought was going to be really good, is kind of like, oh, well, we're not great on the perimeter. So if you go and you look at like who they got to play, Nico Collins, Brian Thomas Jr., and, the Myers now, who is like, looks like a perfect fit into that offense. Is now like, that's recipe for disaster. So if they can win one game, I think they can beat the 49ers only because they'll keep Phillip Rivers clean. And if they can run the ball, which again, the 49ers just do not have a great defense. The 49ers are basically having a season, what we said that like the Bengals were going to have if they were going to end up winning a lot of games, was like, you have to score a bunch of points and then just get some timely stops because your defense is going to be terrible. Same thing with Cowboys. Like, you got to let Dak cook, get some timely stops, and then maybe you're a playoff team. Well, the 49ers have been able to kind of create that and like have become a playoff team. But I think they're going to be one of those like paper tigers where, they look really good right now, but then it's like the Vikings last year. They look really dangerous. They get in the playoffs. The warts come out and they're gone after the first round.
And Sam Darnold is their quarterback. Or I'm sorry.
So I know we kind of went off on a tangent, but let's go back to Seattle and you start talking about this. They can't run the ball. So now you have to play hero ball with Sam Darnold. That's not a recipe.
He's Sam Darnold.
Right. That's not a recipe for success either. Is like, yeah, you have an elite defense, but I don't know. We're still not in the era. We've moved past the era where an elite defense can win you a championship. I think you have to have some semblance of a run game. You cannot just sit and drop back pass, because if you do that, again, the Kubiak system, right, is the Shanahan-McVay system. I think McVay has kind of figured out the drop back pass stuff, but I think that's because of Matthew Stafford. We know that the 49ers have always struggled with drop back passing, and then now we are seeing it again. I just don't think that you can sit there and play that. They have to find ways to score touchdowns, and they're just not right now.
Right. Speaking of touchdowns, Rams, Lions, all the points were scored in this game. And I think that it's kind of an interesting showing, because I think that the Lions from a year or 2 years ago win that game with the exact same score, just flipped because Ben Johnson has that one play that's like, all right, that's ridiculous. And it was a backwards pass to Sam Laporta, and they scored a touchdown. Awesome. And then on the other side of the ball, Aaron Glenn also has this one series where it's just like they just got to Stafford or whatever it was. And I think this is where they miss their coordinators the most, is like in this latter part of the season, where some of that Dan Campbell just kind of like, all right, we're kind of done with that. And the X's and O's matter more, and you have guys to lean on like Ben Johnson especially, and Aaron Glenn.
Yeah, and I think, look, the Rams to me are a team that I think couldn't imagine them getting more explosive. I didn't think Puka Nacua could get even better. And then Sean McVay comes out, I think it was last week or leading up to this week, and was like, they were talking about just kind of how well he's played. And he's like, yeah, he doesn't have to play tight end. He doesn't have to block. We now have tight ends on the field. We can go 13 personnel, put him out there. Now he's like, so now he's becoming more of a complete receiver. And I'm just like, oh man, that's like even worse. And then Devontae Adams, now they do have some injuries. Devontae Adams comes back. I think it's just that offense is like pick your poison, because they'll throw to their tight ends too. I mean, that play action they're doing. I love it. Williams and Corum both had 70 yards. So like they're basically keeping everybody healthy. You know, again, Puka is not taking the beating that he's usually takes during the year by this time of just like, yeah, not only does he have the volume receptions, but he's also blocking a ton on early downs. Now they can say, hey, just go block the corner, or hey, just go crack this safety. You don't have to come in here and block an edge, 20 times a game. I think that has really been a deal for them. And then defensively, this defensive line is not fun to go against. Poona Ford being at nose has really allowed the other four guys, because this really is a primary five down line, is really allowed the other guys to do this. I think it's hilarious that Aaron Donald retires, and then they're like, hey, what if we just picked up his production in the aggregate? So it's like, let's just get a bunch of dudes that are good to great, and then now they can just that way, because we don't have our one leveraging piece, and so that will do that. So they were able to manufacture it through the aggregate. They continue to play, the whole cliche of chess not checkers. They are continuously to play chess while everybody else is playing checkers around the league.
Yeah. I think that's the Super Bowl pick. I know you probably got a lot of hopes for that stupid logo on top of your head, but the Rams look really good. I think that could be the matchup that we'll see what the Patriots or Bills do, depending on what like the AFC, because it's wide open, because the team that won it for 3 years straight. Let's not forget about that. They won this conference for 3 years straight. Kansas City Chiefs. All right.
Hey, wait, before we go, because I know we spent a lot of time on this game as well, but I want to say one thing about the Lions, especially defensively, because I think that's where people are like, they looked really good at the beginning of the year. They don't look really good at right now. But this is a complete. So we also saw two complete outliers in defense. So the Rams play 5 down front with a lot of DBs on the field. Nobody else does that. We have the Lions that play almost nothing but base. The problem with that, and so somebody was asking me about this the other day, and I was like, the Lions are basically the Dolphins of defense, where if one guy goes down, the entire chain just falls apart, right? Like the whole chain falls apart. And so what ends up happening is that you don't have Branch. Kirby Joseph is hurt. Well, you can't play a bunch of man coverage anymore. You have to pivot. You're playing a bunch of base, so teams are able to kind of take advantage of that. You have an 18-week season. I hate schemes that live on a razor's edge in an 18-week season. It just does not work.
Yeah. Speaking of the Dolphins, they lose to the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. And that, along with the Titans 49ers outcome, I was like, yeah, I could have told you that before the week got started. Yeah, the Dolphins are going to score a couple of garbage time touchdowns, but they're going to get worked, even though they've been playing well for the last few weeks, and the Titans are the worst team in football. 49ers quietly one of the best. Like they got 10 wins already. So like they're one of the better teams in football. It's just that the NFC West also has the Rams and the Seahawks, who will be playing on Thursday night. And we'll talk about them here in a little bit. But anything you've got to add about the Titans 49ers? Because that's probably the more interesting out of those two games, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Cam Ward's fighting for his life. I like Cam Ward. I just think like it is what it is, man. You typically have a rookie year like this when you're the number one pick anyway. Very rarely do you go in as the number one pick and you kind of walk into a situation where you're really good. I think the offense is really good in San Francisco. I think the defense, Saleh is doing the best he can. Mm-hmm. And this is why I think Saleh is great as a defensive coordinator, because they literally have we've talked about bad pass rushes already. I mean, the 49ers really have one of the worst pass rushes. I mean, they're barely better than Carolina in pressure rate. So, Ward had over 3 seconds to throw the entire game. I mean, that's insane. I mean, really, like 2.5 is considered long in the NFL. So a whole half second, they're 25th in DVOA. They're not great. What I will just say, and I'll make one comment and then we can move on to better games, basically. The Dolphins versus Steelers, they even made a comment on like in the game. So if you watch the game, Aikman and Buck were like, and the Dolphins are bringing it down within 10 seconds again. It's like, There was no sense of urgency. This team, like, look, Mike McDaniels, love him, hate him, because I think there is no in between. There's not a lot of people that are like, I think I've talked about this on here. The offense is a meme that you have no run game against the Steelers, and then you just take the clock all the way down below 10 seconds.
Quarter.
You were giving up.
Still alive for the playoffs too.
Yeah. So I don't think he lasts. I don't think he lasts the year.
All right. The Bills stormed back from being down, what was it, like 21-3 or something like that. They end up splitting their season series with the Patriots. And I think the Patriots, they kind of needed a loss at this point in the season because just a really young team that had won 10 straight or whatever it had been up to that point. But what does this Bills defense really frustrating, especially when you have the recipe going up against an offense like the one you have is just to keep them off the field. The best way to do that is by running the football while the other team is on offense and they can't stop the run.
Yeah, neither of these defenses could stop the run at all. And I think like if you're going to be bad, I've said this before, if you're going to be bad on one side of the football, it's good, especially in modern football, it's better modern NFL, be bad in the run. The problem is the Bills are just like atrociously bad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they've tried to manufacture some things in the past couple of weeks. Again, I wrote about it this Monday on Match Quarters, which is basically we're going to add in the secondary. We're going to have Cole Bishop kind of be a careening missile prior every once in a while. We'll bring him down. We're going to blitz the corners. Again, Benford was out. Maxwell Hairston, I think he's going to be a really good corner, but that's not a body type that you want to go throw into the box. So I think into like Tre'Davious White is another one where he's kind of an older corner. I don't necessarily want to throw him into the mix. He's blitzing from the field a lot of times, so you're not going to see this. This was a battle of the running backs, and these are two teams that run the ball really, really well. The Bills can't do this. They're light inside. Linebackers are hybrids. We talked about this where we're built to beat the Chiefs. We're built to beat the Bengals. And then now the whole entire the offensive archetypes have now changed. They're going to have to do some different things. They shifted to cover 3 last year to try and cover up some of these issues. They're blitzing from the secondary. The playoff outlook for me is this. It's basically like if Allen is Superman, they win.
And James Cook is playing well because you keep that defense off the field too.
Right. But what happens when they run into a team like Denver that is really good to stopping the run? What are they going to do? You're just going to pass to your tight ends? Well, okay. Well, I mean, like, we've seen them. They've taken Surtain and put him on a tight end before. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, well, now we take Kincaid away. We know that you can't do anything. Who else are you going to throw to? Like Keon Coleman can't catch the ball. He can't get open. Shakir's good. But we've talked about that before. It's like he's basically an extension of the run game.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at a team that really just cannot press down the field. That's not going to be really good when you start looking at some of these top teams in the AFC, where you have teams like Jacksonville and the Patriots that, the Steelers can shock you and be able to stop the run on any given week. I think the Jaguars are really good defensively. We talked about it. New England struggles against the run. So, but do you want to see them a third time? So I think like for me, the flashing red lights, I don't think they go to the Super Bowl this year.
Wow. To me, it's either the Rams or the Bills at this point. Like just because, and like I'm a sucker for quarterback play, especially at this time of year, because it's the playoffs. But I mean, all right, I'll hold you to it then. And you're probably just saying that because you're stupid Broncos, but that's fine. I would too. All right, so Ravens, they shut out the Bengals 24-0, and a pretty impressive performance, more by their defense. And they only dropped back to pass 16 times, and Lamar took 4 sacks on those, believe it or not.
He's taking a bunch of sacks lately. For somebody that can run I think we've got to get the old Lamar back a little bit more. I need you to start running the ball a little bit more. Yeah. And I'm not talking design runs, but I'm talking like, look, if it's open, take it. Quit trying to throw the ball down the field to receivers that just start. Like Zay Flowers is great if you get it to him within 5 yards. Like if you get it to him quick, he's great. Bateman is kind of hit or miss. Yeah. Andrews and Likely are tight ends. But it's like,
And
hey,
DeAndre Hopkins will have a 3rd and 16 catch once every 3 weeks.
right, exactly, because teams forget that he's on the roster. But I'm with you. I can't figure this Ravens defense out either. Last month within the last 4 weeks are a top 5 unit in EPA. Okay, but then we were, a month ago we were like, fire Zach Orr. And then a month earlier than that, it was, defense is really good. And then like the beginning of the season, we were like, fire Zach Orr. So it's like, are we going to fire him or is he going to figure it out? I don't know. Maybe it's scheduling. I don't know. But yeah, I thought it was really weird. The Bengals typically play. Of course, though, we have vintage Lamar. Look, Jamar Chase against the Ravens, guaranteed like 100 yards. Henry goes against that terrible defense, goes for 100 yards. So it was just kind of that, and the Bengals couldn't score points.
Yeah. All right. A couple of games between some teams that don't matter anymore. The Commanders and Giants. Commanders get the win, which I'll appreciate that for the cover there. Then the Vikings and the Cowboys. It looked like a really nice matchup, like a good 70s matchup between the Vikings and Cowboys, but nobody's that good anymore, except for JJ McCarthy, because Kevin O'Connell's like, fine, I'll do my job a little bit and get something rolling here. Browns and Bears. Now, our boy Caleb can play a little bit. He spun that thing a little bit, and the touchdown pass to DJ Moore was ridiculous at the back of the end zone, double covered and all that good stuff. But what I really want to focus on is Trevor Lawrence and the Jags, because believe it or not, the NFC South and AFC South are both very interesting. And I think that Trevor Lawrence is one of the what I like to call him is like a hinge player, because like the Jags could make a run to the Super Bowl if he's playing well, because of what that defense can do too.
Yeah, I mentioned that last week. I said, there's a team, I think we talked about that last week. If there's a team that I don't want to play in the playoffs, it's probably the Jaguars. And especially if T-Law is playing the way that he looks really good. ETN came out and said it's the best he's played since he won a national championship with him in Clemson. He's the best he's ever played. That, he remembers it being again, people are going to be like, yeah, but it was the Jets. But go look at what he's been able to do the past month. He's really started turning on. The defense is legit. I think Anthony Campanelli is a rising star in this league. He has been able to basically take the best schemes around the league. He's worked for Halfley. He's worked for Flores. He's put in some Fangio stuff. Coverage rotations. They don't play a ton of man. So he's doing all the things modern NFL defenses are doing, and they're doing it really well, which tells me he's a teacher. And the teachers right now are being successful. That's why we talk about Mentor, McDonald. That's why we talk about those guys so much, because the fundamentals are there. They're doing the right things. They're teaching, Spags. You can always tell the Chiefs are fundamentally going to be sound. They're going to run to the ball. Those are all the things that when you look at these really elite defenses, they're doing the fundamentals correctly. That's what you see here. The one thing that is concerning, they do lack pressure. Even though that defensive line is relatively good, I just don't think that they have the pressure to really make it. We will see them against Denver next week, which, by the way, I'll be in Mile High.
I hope you're a bad luck charm.
Nah, don't say that. It'll be the first time. It's the first time I will have actually been to a
Broncos
game.
Well,
Yes.
I hope they win by 1 point.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it. I'm turning 40, and so my wife is like, birthday, Christmas, all wrapped into one. I'm going to take my dad. My dad hadn't been to a Broncos game that was not located in Kansas City since probably like the 80s. So we're pretty pumped we're going to turn it into a boys trip. So it should be fun. But I told you at the beginning of the show, there were some crazy stats. So crazy stats and not great stats, right? Like Herbert beats Mahomes. I know you're mad. Like, is he a good quarterback? Is he not? Like, is it volume or what? But 1941, Felix. So yes, during the World War was the last time an NFL team finished with less than 7 turnovers. 1932, in the heart of the Great Depression, was the last time an NFL team finished the season with no interceptions. The Jets might finish with less than 7 turnovers and no interceptions in the year of our Lord 2025.
Look, that's almost 100 years for a team with no interceptions.
Yes.
Almost 100 years.
Yes, you are correct. We are in the 90s. Yes. I mean, that's insane.
That's incredible. And I mean, it's just, and I like you said, it was in the middle of the Great Depression. I think that's just called that being a Jets fan, the Great Depression.
Yes.
Because that's incredible. And like, just a quick bird's eye view at their organization. Have they ever been good? Like, I mean, at least since I've been alive, and just call it since 2000, they've never ever had a team that's been like, oh, let's see what the Jets do in the playoffs this year. And that's got to be really, really frustrating as not only a fan, but like as an organ, like if you've worked for that team, just as a janitor, like I can't imagine what it's like. Even, I mean, the owner obviously is out of his mind. So like what's going on with the Jets that they can't figure anything out, and they're probably going to be looking for a new head coach this offseason, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they probably give Glenn one more year because, I mean, dude, you have no.
I mean, then you're giving him one more year, and then you're looking for another coach after 2026.
Yeah, I don't know. Will a quarterback fix this, especially one from the 2026 draft? You know what I mean? Like,
unless it's Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah, and
even then,
I think like I hate it. I hate it for Glenn, but it's just like you're in the worst possible spot to not be very good, and it's like you're constantly getting a beat down. It's just rough.
Yeah. All right. Texans get a win over the Cardinals, which Jacoby Brissett, you can say this just about every week. He played fine, but they didn't win because it's the Cardinals, and they're gonna cardinal it and not do the right things. And their defense has regressed because of injuries, and just kind of they're one of those teams where they kind of emotionally lost it early in the season because of all those one-score losses. But the Texans, especially in the last, I mean, it's been 6-7 weeks now. They've won like 6 games straight now. They're looking like they're kind of in that same position as another team in their division, like the Jags.
Yeah, to me, like the big story. People, if you follow me at all, I've always been a big champion for the Cardinals. I mean, they do really probably the most interesting defense in the NFL. I want it and it's just, I think they just do something completely out of the norm, running that 3 safety system with Budda Baker. But as you mentioned, like a lot of injuries in the secondary have kind of hampered that. Defensive line just didn't hit. Sweat just has not been producing at which, again, these splash edges tend to not work out. They just don't, right? Because a lot of times these edges are a production of the scheme that they're coming from. I mean, think of the defensive line from the Eagles last year. They were basically 8 deep. Okay, well, he goes to the Cardinals and he has to manufacture it on his own. You know, he's not Myles Garrett. He's not a Max Crosby. He's not a Micah Parsons. He's not a TJ Watt. What do all of those guys do really well? And really, you could argue TJ Watt has been the benefactor of really good interior line play. So what is it that about Micah, about Max, and about Myles that is different? It doesn't matter who plays inside. They're going to win. You could argue Micah's not the best at the run defense where Max and Myles are. So to me, I look at this and it's like another example of why you don't go get a splash edge. Look at the big picture before you go and do that. They were trying to get, I know that they were really trying to get the Milton Williams. They were trying to get Milton Williams and Sweat to come together. I think that's a little bit different. But look, this is another team like the Raiders that does not have a lot of cash. So what are you going to do? Are you going to fire Gannon? You're already off the
Kyler Murray bus.
Yeah, you're going to trade Kyler in the offseason. So I'm interested. Look, that'll be a topic that we'll have in the offseason. But this is, I agree with you. Like it's just kind of not. It's good, but it's not good enough. Right. And the Texans are not a team that's another team that I don't want to see. That I don't need that offense to figure it out.
Yeah, these last 3 weeks will be really interesting. I mean, they have 3, or even if they go 2-1 in this stretch, Raiders, Chargers, Colts. And then I was just looking at the Jag schedule, which is very similar. It's Broncos, Colts, Titans. and in Denver and Indianapolis. So, I mean, both teams have relatively consistent schedules. They both could go 2-1 down the stretch, have some similar records, but the AFC South is on the line these next couple of weeks, especially if the Colts are, even if Phillip Rivers plays fine, he's probably not going to win them a ton of games or win them more than one or two at the most. So, all right, let's look ahead at Thursday night football. There probably should be a pretty interesting matchup. I don't think that Sam Darnold throws another 4 interceptions against the LA Rams like he did earlier this year, but I am expecting, being that it's a short weekend, Sean McVay tends to do this a couple times a year. It's like 16-13 Rams.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the interesting things about the game prior in the early year was like if he throws one less interception, then they probably win that game. I thought Shula had a masterful game plan, made him play quarterback. He held the ball for we talked about this earlier. Ward was holding the ball really long, but that's just because nobody, there's no pass rush. Well, then we talk about Sam Darnold was holding the ball because he had no idea where to throw the ball. And so you had every covered rotation you could possibly imagine. Chris Shula was throwing at him. So I'm interested this week. What are they going to do as kind of that follow-up? Like, hey, we kind of got away with one. We were able to get the 4 picks. What are we going to do? Darnold probably, you can't rely on 4 interceptions again from him. Both of these defenses are elite. I think it's going to come down to first quarterback makes a mistake, whether it's Stafford or Darnold, whoever makes the most mistakes, whether it's Stafford threw 2 picks, Darnold threw 3, or if it's Darnold threw 1 pick, Stafford threw 2, or vice versa. Whoever throws the most picks is going to end up losing this game.
Yeah, and it could come down to does Kenneth Walker make an impact, or do the Seahawks start running the football a little bit more to keep the Rams offense off the field if they start rolling against that Seahawks defense? And so it'll be interesting to see that game. That's because again, the NFC West is probably the best coach division overall. And then you get to see these guys on a short week, so you get to see McVay and the defensive McVay go up against each other with only a couple of days of preparation. So it's going to be really interesting, that chess match.
No, I agree. And defensively, these are 2 hybrid defenses. These are 2 lighter defenses, but they do it completely different ways. You have Eamon Worry, who's really become a major piece for the Seahawks. And has kind of been used as a tool. He is basically what Kyle Hamilton is for the Ravens. Now, I know someone's gonna be like, he's no Kyle Hamilton. You're right, he's not. Kyle Hamilton's an alien. I'm just saying they use him similar. And then you have in LA, they want to do everything with their 5 D linemen. And so they're going to drop in a lighter box. They're going to only play with landmen in the middle. A lot of times they'll have another safety out there. So I think with them, it's going to be a really interesting matchup because it's you can get to the same thing in different ways. And that's what we're seeing with the Rams in Seattle. They're getting to how can we play a light package versus 12 personnel and 13 personnel, but still win. They're doing it, Seattle's doing it with stunts and defensive line play and just kind of like a freak at nickel. But then you also have but everybody tackles. That's the other thing. All of their DBs tackle. They just go and thump, right? And so they're kind of like the Texans in that way of we tackle in the secondary as well. Where LA is more we're just going to kick your ass up front with our 5. We have a really good linebacker in the middle that's going to tie together, and we just hope you don't throw to Emmanuel Forbes. You don't have enough time. And with Seattle, they're trying to run everything through the middle of the field because it's the same offense. So I think this is look. I think that we will see this matchup again in the playoffs. I don't think Darnold lays an egg in the playoffs, but I do think these are the 2 better teams in the NFC. I think this is a really exciting matchup, especially for a Thursday night, because sometimes we get duds, but I thought they've done a better job this year with giving us better Thursday nights.
Which, I mean, last week could have been a dud with the Falcons Bucs. I thought it was for most of it, and then the Falcons had their 4th quarter comeback. So
yeah, it's if you stayed up to watch the game,
and even later after the presser and put the kids to bed, put Thursday night after dark. Todd, you cussing too much, you bad boy.
Yeah, no, it was a good look. I think now we've seen Look, there's a couple of games we mentioned them like that were just kind of duds. We kind of passed over them. We're kind of to that point in the season where we're probably only going to cover like, hey, so when the Commanders play the Giants, hey, they played a game. Jaden Daniels didn't play. He probably doesn't need to play the rest of the year. Okay, let's move on. But I do think like we're starting to get, especially in the AFC South, they all got to play each other again.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of jockeying for position. So it's going to be really, really interesting. Thanks for joining us again on Let's Talk Ball. Again, if you're listening to this and you finished to the end, you're listening to this on matchquarters.com, which about half of you are, go to Apple or Spotify and rate and review us. It really helps us grow, especially on Apple. We need some help on Apple making this thing grow. So we appreciate you. Go watch football this week. It's on every single night because it's bowl season.
Bowl season, the Boca Raton Bowl. I'm locked in.
Can't wait. The Bahamas Bowl is not even out anymore. They canceled the Bahamas Bowl, so can't even have any fun around here anymore.